What is going on, guys? This is the Poke Tea Time podcast, where we serve you up a cup of the hottest takes on what's going on in the Pokemon community and the card collecting community. Today, this morning, this afternoon, wherever you are in the world, we have the one and only Tanner McBride, aka Cryptic Tanner. This evening, we're going to be talking about new TCGs and the future of new TCGs, as well as what is the Cryptic TCG. So before we get right into it, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the podcast. We are also available on Spotify and Apple, so make sure you give us a 5-star review there. And we also have the Discord. Make sure you join the Poke Tea Time Discord. We have a lot of memes. We're showcasing different collections, and it's just an overall good, positive community to be a part of. How's it going, Tanner?
Friends, so happy to be here. Thanks for having me, dude.
Happy for you to be here, man. Happy for you to be here. I know, we've been wanting to have you on the podcast for a hot minute now. We've been friends for a while now.
Yeah, we've been
I think
getting
like
games together.
Well, I've been getting coached by you, even though I mess up a lot for like, what is it now? 2 year, close to 2 years,
Yeah,
about
it's been a
1.5
while,
years. It's been a while. It's crazy how fast time flies within this space.
Truly.
It's definitely cool. It's definitely interesting to see how things have definitely changed in the landscape of card collecting and card playing. How many new TCGs have popped up, in the past 2-3 years alone is absolutely mind-boggling. It's hard to keep up now, but I think I said it best that this is like the new TCG era, and then you put it in better terms, like this is the indie card game era, which I think is a better way to kind of describe what's going on right now. This is truly the indie card game era. There's so many new different TCGs are popping up, and a lot of times for me as an individual, for the most part, it's easy for me to label all new TCGs as this, kind of pump and dump kind of thing, or like the ICO version of TCGs, where you have so many people that are pumping up new TCGs, and then just kind of not really living up, and they just kind of don't live up to people's expectations as far as playability goes, as far as collectability goes. I think it's all about that fine balance. So, before we get right into the nitty gritty of what Cryptic TCG is and all these new TCGs are, who is Tanner McBride? How'd you come into the Pokemon community? What do you do? I know you have a YouTube channel. Kind of walk us through that entire process, like from you as a child with TCGs, what they kind of mean to you, and where you are at now.
I got it. So I was born in 92, Vegas, born and raised. So I was right in the sweet spot for base set Pokemon, for the first gen Pokemon. So I was hardcore about collecting the cards. My weekly allowance would be a booster pack typically. So favorite Pokemon being Gengar, of course. I actually have a Gengar tattoo. And
Nice.
I've been into the TCG space, like, I guess, since 99, really, since base set dropped, because I was a little 7-8-year-old kid, and I was highly obsessed with the cards. And from there, my stepbrother's stepdad, so like my stepdad, introduced us to Magic. So we were about 11 or 12 years old when we learned about Magic, and kind of typical that Pokemon kind of feeds Magic, and we became Magic players. And he had a bunch of like ABU era Magic cards that we would just no sleeves, throw together decks, play games, and he taught us the rules. And from there we were just hooked. So we played Magic throughout high school and even into like our adult years. But
That's crazy.
Yeah. Towards the end of high school, I began to pursue my dream of being a professional fireman. So I joined Explorers when I was 16, was working for the ambulance, running 911 calls when I was 18, a week after I graduated high school. And then I got hired by the fire department when I was 20. So this July, I'll have 10 years as a fireman.
And congrats, man.
Yeah, thank you. Recently, I was, diving into these new TCGs and learning about the new space and kind of this indie TCG era and what it was all about. And that was while I was developing a comic series based on the lore of Kryptik. So I actually own the copyright and have an official copyright on the Kryptik lore. I was like, I want to make my own game. And I always have wanted to make my own game, but I never thought it was possible because I was thinking a little bit too small. So now with the internet and how the world works, it's totally possible for me to make my own game.
Right.
I own a gym in Vegas and have experience as an entrepreneur, so I was able to apply all those skills and all that knowledge to a game and treat it like a real business. So kind of all came together perfectly, and now here we are. It's great.
Yeah, that's That's pretty crazy. You know, most people stop playing cards in middle
Mhm.
school and high school, and it just kind of stuck with you the entire time because that's such a big part of your identity.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
most people have hobbies. Most people go through different situations where, they fall in and out of hobbies. They go into a hobby, just whatever it may be. It's definitely interesting to see that kind of transition into what you're currently doing right now. Um, what would you say? Did you play any other TCGs outside of Pokemon?
We actually never played Pokemon. We only ever collected.
Okay,
So we
okay,
actually
okay.
didn't know how to play. We were, pretty young, 7, 8 year old kids, and to us it didn't really matter. We didn't want to play, we just wanted to collect our favorite Pokemon. So we watched the show, of course,
Same,
and we
but
wanted
not same.
certain Pokemon, and we would line them up and make our little teams, and we of course played the shit out of the Game Boy games. So
Yeah,
I was Pokemon Blue. I'm a big Blastoise fan. My starter is always Squirtle. So I was hardcore into all that, and then once we discovered Magic, Pokemon just kind of took a backseat. We were buying Magic cards at that point, and I think the reason we were so heavily attracted to Magic is we wanted to be stimulated on that gameplay level, and that was something that we knew. Uh, I mean, Pokemon can offer you, but Magic is kind of considered to be like on another level for
yeah.
gameplay because
Gameplay, yeah.
people actually buy the cards to play the game. So,
hmm Yeah, it's when I was growing up, I did play the TCG with my half brother. Um,
mhm.
I wanted to collect the cards, but my parents did not want to spend that kind of money on me at that time. I remember my first holo being Venusaur. But I remember
Wait,
distinctively my half brother and I would play the TCG. I remember having a base at Charizard in my deck. And me as a kid, when you see big numbers, you're like, oh, this is like the most broken thing there is. And uh I believe base at Charizard is 150 HP.
hmm,
And when you play the game, you really understand and realize that, dang, this guy sucks. And that didn't register to me as a kid. And so every time I played against my half brother, he'd beat the living snot out of me while we
hmm.
played the games. And so I played all the video games, the mainline games, as well as like the GameCube series games, all the way up to high school, and then I just kind of stopped when I got into college. So yeah, no, that's definitely interesting to see where that has kind of begun. Where do
Mhm.
you where do you find a lot of your inspiration as far as Cryptic goes?
I think initially the story was really just kind of created out of thin air. Like it was something that I was working on and developing, and I wanted to have this world that were full of these citizens that were from different factions, and these factions were taken from worlds by the overseers and put onto cryptic islands so they can interact with each other, and they have a certain amount of time. In our game, 66 years till they face judgment. And I wanted to be a very dramatic, gritty. People die, a lot of people die, and those that face judgment very rarely ascend into overseer status. They just stay dead.
Mm,
So I that was where like the actual story and lore came from. And as far as gameplay goes, the base and like what I like to play is of course Magic, but there's certain things that I don't really particularly like about Magic, like the way
mm,
life is kept track of, the way the resource system works, where the lands are actually built into your deck. Those are things I just didn't like about the game because it just produces it like introduces way too much RNG and like way too much chance to the game. So we wanted to have every card function as a resource so that every card draw is live, and we wanted the life point system to be able to be kept track of by the cards themselves. So in our game, you have 6 11-year cards, which are essentially shields that protect you from the attacks of your opponent. And when those are all gone and they hit you one more time, you lose the game. So you don't need dice, tokens, a piece of paper, nothing like that. You can
that's
play our
cool.
game 100% with just the cards. And that was really important to me. And that design led into other things like the 11-year costs and the 11-year abilities of these cards. Is when they're destroyed as a shield, the defending player actually gets to use that card, and it can give them an advantage in that moment so that you just don't get steamrolled or their advantage doesn't start to snowball.
Mm,
So I took inspiration from the shields from like Duel Masters, Kaijudo. I think that system was genius. I just want to expand on that because they were pretty limited on their trap card or their trigger system.
right.
So I wanted to expand on that and kind of go a little bit further with it. But as far as the gameplay goes, I took stuff from a bunch of different games I liked, and then we had our own two unique mechanics, which were the 11-year stuff and the short time effect, which buffs your cards a little bit if you're losing.
Right. Um I don't really play a whole lot of TCGs.
Mhm.
As I've always been this collector for the most part. I played a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh growing up as a kid. And
Mhm.
so seeing this and seeing what you're doing is definitely interesting. Um the artwork definitely speaks to me too. It gives me a lot of it gives me this vibe of Magic the Gathering, but it's more it has more dark tones to it,
Mhm.
that
Definitely.
I appreciate when I see it. It's definitely new. It's definitely refreshing for myself and a lot of other people. Um, and just recently, you had the 66 Riddle boxes go
Mhm.
out.
Yes.
So, walk us through that. Walk us the thought process behind the 66 Riddle box. What was your what was the inspiration for that? Tell us about the whole puzzle process, and tell us the business aspect of doing that. What was the purpose of doing that from a business perspective?
Sure. So the riddle boxes were actually an idea that me and my partner Connor came up with. He's the lore master. He's the guy
Mm-hmm.
that's super smart and helps me develop the story. And basically, the idea was that the influencers and streamers would have to open these boxes, show the cards, and they're symbol for symbol and equivalent to the English language, but printed in the cryptic language, which are our own unique symbols. So the viewers had to decipher the language by looking at cards and comparing them to the current cards in the game. And the box toppers themselves had formed an image. So 11 box toppers would form an image of Cryptic Island, and that had a message across it. And we didn't tell them what it led to. We didn't tell them what the prize was, nothing like that. And Mason in our Discord actually figured it out before anybody else because he had been watching all the videos. It said, "Seek the Delvers if you want to survive." He DM'd me that, and I said, "Post this as your official answer on the Kickstarter in a comment." And he did, and his prize was a trip to Collecticon Dallas. So we paid for his flight and his room, and he's gonna be chilling with us in the booth, and that was like his grand prize for that.
Hey,
And
there
from
you
like,
go.
yeah. So by design, these boxes actually force you to pay close attention to the cards, to appreciate the art, and to actually open the product.
Yeah,
So not
that's
to hold onto it sealed.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
something that I kind of appreciated. When I talked to other people in the community that had already opened the boxes, and then after talking to you a little bit more, there's that level of it's like a sauce, right? Like it's not just opening a box and then you just have the cards and then it's just gameplay, or just having a simple box topper, right? There's that extra level of creativity there that was available in the sense of a puzzle, a sort of thing that you had to go through to try and figure out. You don't know what the prize is, but it's like this extra incentive to be able to open up a product, and I think that's one thing that card games like Pokemon kind of don't have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Card
It's like they're
games
too
like
big. Like,
yeah, and
sorry.
it's kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh as well. I mean, people want you can either keep the cards sealed and or you can just keep the stuff there. So there's a lot of people. I think the vast majority of my audience is Pokemon collectors. There's some people who cross collect between different TCGs and CCGs, whether it's Digimon, whether it's Yu-Gi-Oh, whether it's MetaZoo. For simpler terms, what is the Cryptic TCG?
I would say Cryptic is definitely a combination. So it's for the collector, but for the player as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to split that up as evenly as possible. So in my
That's good.
mind, what I've seen lately, like in the Pokemon space, there's more collectors than players. And then in
Yeah.
Magic, there was more players than collectors.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be somewhere in between. So I think that we can create sealed products that cater to both. And there's going to be enough cards available to be used as game pieces for the player, but also that rare chase that people crave. So I've noticed what trends are in the market and what people want out of their sealed product and implemented that, but added our own little spice so that people can actually play. And I don't want the sealed product to go to a level that's so insane, like like in the past, other games have experienced where their product's so incredibly valuable sealed that no one opens it, so no one can play the game. And that's going to be on us from a manufacturing and distribution perspective. We have to be on our A game so that we can make sure that the cards are available to players, because this is a player's game. Like I was telling you before we started, we had a 32 person tournament recently. 80 plus people applied to be in the tournament, and we're talking about a tabletop simulator tournament that people don't even necessarily have access to that software. So the numbers that want to participate in these online tournaments is actually much greater, and this is for a game that doesn't even exist yet. So it is absolutely a player's game, but I do want to satisfy both. And like, not to get too crazy far ahead of ourselves here, but I recently took a trip to Quebec in Canada to tour the printing facility that we're actually going to be using to make our game. And after seeing what they're capable of with their different foiling processes and embossing and etching and things like that, I don't want to go too far into, people steal my ideas, but the trading card industry has not even touched what these people are capable of. A lot of these techniques go back 100+ years, things they've been doing to paper for 100+ years that the trading card game industry has never even used. So,
which is a great thing, because it makes duplicating and replicating cards that much more difficult, right?
Oh, those cards will be impossible.
Right. It's sort of similar, like it's sort of like the whole issue that MetaZoo had previously, where people were replicating the cards because the foiling wasn't too crazy or the card stock wasn't too special. It's just stuff like that I think a lot of people would appreciate, because it's like that's one thing that's always something in the back of someone's mind, is like, hey, is this card legitimate? Is this card real? And with today's advancements in technology, it's like, okay, like these things have to be set in place to make sure that the longevity of these cards are still very difficult to duplicate even 20 years after the fact. And that's something that people should be thinking of, that I don't think a lot of people really are thinking about currently. It's more of like, hey, I'm thinking of what's going on right now.
Or they're thinking of short-term cash. They want to produce as many cards as possible while demand is high, so that they can send those to distribution and get paid, which I do understand, and that is important, but to what end? I mean, for the longevity of your game, you better make sure your shit's dialed in. And that kind of leads me into like another thing that I'm sure we would talk about later anyways, is that people that talk about like these new TCGs or the indie TCG era being a negative thing, you are so confused. If you think that this is a bad thing, you're so confused. Any game you love, including Magic and Pokemon, trust me, they're paying attention to what these smaller games are doing. They're taking cues from us, and products across the board will be improved. Magic cards, of course. Pokemon cards, cards from my game, cards from MetaZoo. All of us are going to push each other to take it to the next level, and the consumer wins. Because we can't increase the prices because we have to compete with each other. So we just have to increase the quality so the consumer gets something better and better for less and less over time, and that's competition. So it's a good thing. It's a blessing that all these games exist. Trust me.
Yeah. It's sort of like Apple, right? Apple in this, I would compare Apple to Pokemon, right? Apple doesn't necessarily have to try anything new. They can watch what brand new startups do and see what they're doing is successful. When they see that gain traction, they could replicate that. They could buy it out. They could do something of their own just to see if it works. So with what MetaZoo is doing, with what with other TCGs like yourself, whatever that might be, whether it's numbered cards, stuff like this, like rookie patch autos, having you could, there's so many different things that Pokemon can do. They could probably take notes and kind of sit down and say like, hey, this is what we want to do, right? We have products available for the player, but what if we start making products for the collector? And that's something that they could very much do. I know my friend here, TapLab, Andy, he made a video about the comparisons between Pokemon and MetaZoo. So many people these days stonk Pokemon product, right? There's no real incentive to really open up product. It's just the mentality where, hey, if I settle on this, it's just going to grow in value, which may or may not be true depending on the print runs of certain cards or certain sets. It's just one of those things. To me, it just makes no sense. Like, sitting on a product should not automatically equate to an increased value in terms of what the product is. There should be something there that increases that value. And I think that thing is an incentive to be able to open up the product, which MetaZoo does kind of have with their what's it called?
The Green Man?
The secret rares. Yeah, the secret rares. And with what you do as far as like these different puzzles that you kind of have to create, like there's that incentive to be able to open up the product. And I think that's what a lot of TCGs aren't really focusing on it as well. It's just more so like, hey, this is a pretty card. This is the artwork that goes behind it. There's no development behind the actual gameplay. There's no research done. It's just, like I said before, it kind of reminds me of 2017, the cryptocurrency space, where there's so many different ICOs that popped up that you know, promise X, Y, and Z. They had a whatever roadmap, and you know, it was sort of this thing where it was like this all that glitters is gold kind of scenario, and isn't gold scenario, and it just didn't make sense. And so like you have other TCGs that have popped up in this indie card era. You have Sorcery, you have Otherverse, you have yourself, and then I'm sure there's gonna be, you have D Spirits, which I could say I don't want to talk too much about because I don't really like it, but there's so many different TCGs that are popping up, and I think it's best to say that all of you guys are kind of taking notes and cues from each other, where it's like, oh, this is what Tater's doing, this is what you know, Sorcery's doing, this is what D Spirits is doing. I mean, like, there's so many different things that are kind of taking place, and they're learning from each other. Like, look at what Magic the Gathering just did with their numbered cards as of late. Like, now it's becoming difficult. Like, people are now scalping Magic the Gathering cards.
And it's starting to flip into a split between players, collectors, which for Magic is totally weird. They've had lottery cards in the past that definitely increased the percentage of people that were trying to flip or collect the cards. But typically that's considered to be a player's game, and it's starting to shift a little bit into the direction that I think our game will ultimately end up in. So a lot of people just don't play the game. But what's interesting is a lot of people that collect trading cards have been introduced to my game, and it's the art. That's what grabs everybody. It's the art of the cards.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. We cherry pick these artists. Like, our art is totally badass. So they come in, they're like, I like the art. I want to learn a little more about the lore. And they start reading the lore blurbs and the little pieces that we've been given out on Kickstarter. They join the lore seeker section in the Discord, and they start to learn more and get attached to certain characters. And then they're like, you know what? I'm really into this. Maybe I'll learn how to play. And then they continue on and learn how to play the game. It's simple enough to learn, but complex enough to be competitive. And people are like, holy shit, this is actually a good game as well. And all of a sudden we have a collector turned into an actual like hardcore fan of the game. Every aspect of the game. And I think that's huge. And it just speaks volumes about the game and how like on every level it is developed to the max. You know, it's everything we've been able to do, and like accumulation of all of our efforts put into this game has just resulted in a very polished, very beautiful product. And I think that moving forward, as we start to prove, and like a warning I would give to people that are interested in investing in new games, including mine, would be that you need to look at what they're actually doing. Action speaks so much louder than words. Look what we're doing, look what we've announced, and the things that we've actually been able to accomplish, not the things that we promise you we will. And that would be,
I mean, you guys already had a 66 Riddle Box. Oh, sorry to cut you off, but like, you guys already had a 66 Riddle Box. You had a tabletop simulated based tournament, right? You had that.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you don't, like, your Kickstarter's not even done and over with yet. The game technically doesn't exist yet, right? But you actually had physical products. Like, you had two test decks that you sent to me. You had Collecticon promos. You had an actual box with like, that's so much more than what most TCGs that are just starting out, these indie TCGs that don't necessarily have. They don't really have a foot in the door yet. And that's something that just kind of, you know, is kind of sad in a way, because it's like these guys are just printing money just to be able to say like, hey, we have this, this, and this. And, you know, people are just kind of banking on that aspect of being able to flip. And that's something that I also wanted to touch on as well. The flippability of stuff. Like, yeah, sure, you could flip, you know, a brand new TCG. You're going to get a stupid amount of money on it because people are basing it off of the speculation of collectability. However, what's going to keep this indie TCG or indie TCGs alive is the fact that the company itself has to focus on playability. They have to focus on the lore aspect of it. They like, when Pokemon wasn't popular anymore, there was still people playing the game. And I think that's what keeps the hobby alive. Yeah, sure, the secondary market is great. It's great to have, but you have to have that backbone of what is playability. And I think a lot of TCGs kind of, you know, skim over that. They skimp out on that.
Yeah.
And
Sorry.
Oh, one thing I was gonna say is like, I've been to a lot of, retailers. I've been to a lot of local card shops. And some of these established indie TCGs that I won't mention by name that we all know, they don't even have product at these places. And they're so into the collectability of certain things that they forget about, card shops being able to present these card games to their players.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, local card shops are a community on its own, right? You have people who show up every single week. You have people who enter tournaments. You have people who come in. They play upon new releases every single time. Though, like that's a community that's worth investing into, and so many
Yeah.
people forget about that. Like I went to a card shop in Maryland, and they had like one deck of MetaZoo, and that was it. They didn't have anything else, and it's like how do you get people to play the game if you only have one deck?
It's impossible, literally. And I would say like I know other creators watch these shows because I watch the shows that other creators get interviewed on because I want to hear what they have to say and what their
Mm-hmm.
ideas are. So I would say that any of them watching this, I would just say don't forget about the G, TCG. It's a game. Trading
Mm-hmm.
cards are for sports. This is a game. So it has to be functional and it has to be good or people just aren't going to give a shit. So I would say too, like just like you're speaking of the secondary market, as far as from our perspective, the best way to approach that is to create a product that's exciting for people that want to have big pulls and is a functional game. The rest will take care of itself. I don't have to
Absolutely.
worry about anything beyond that because it just will naturally work itself out if the product is worth buying. If the product is worth the price that people are paying for it, it will continue to increase. And when it reaches what the market deems it's worth, that's what it'll be. Not really my business, you know? I just need to make the product as refined and as awesome as possible for collectors and players. And it kind of takes a little bit of stress off my shoulders because as long as I'm doing my job, the secondary market will follow. And like speaking of money, mentioning money, there's two big reasons that games don't do the stuff that we're doing with the physical product and the functional TTS and running tournaments, like all the marketing efforts, like all these things. The number one reason is money. They don't have their own money, so they're using
Correct.
Kickstarter as a vehicle to get all of the money they're going to need for their business. Whereas we had capital up front that was taken from our own investments and pushed into the game. Like between me and my three partners, I've been open about this. I'm not like ashamed to say it or anything, or like weird about saying it. We've
Mm-hmm.
put over 100 grand of our own money into this game already, so it's
Mm-hmm.
not just a put it on Kickstarter and beg for money type of situation. It
Right.
is a funded company that we have capital behind it already that we want to increase to really truly kickstart the company and the game. And then the second thing that they're lacking would be the effort, which you will never that'll never be a problem for us. I'm highly obsessed with this game. So there's creators that just don't want to put in the hours or they think that working 40 hours a week on it is adequate and it's just not.
Not no. You have to dig it. You pretty much have to dedicate your life to
Every
growing a
waking
brand.
hour.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean,
Every hour
it's
and moment that I'm awake.
yeah. And what I've noticed and what I've seen is that you're very present on your Discord. You're very present from what I've seen and what I've heard. And I
Yep.
think a lot of people kind of appreciate that.
Yeah.
One
They
thing that
can
I
ask me
do
directly.
Yeah, one thing I do know is that you've had a YouTube channel
Mhm.
for a while now. Kind of talk us about that and how that kind of influenced Kryptik.
So previously, I had been opening Pokemon cards on YouTube just for fun.
Mhm.
I would sell some packs, and we had a community. We call it the Pokemob. We would sell packs and made a little bit of money, but nothing crazy.
Right.
And then Whatnot, back when in like Whatnot, you actually used to have like some sort of social presence prior to being onboarded as a streamer on Whatnot. I don't know how they do it now, but I had to like get on a call with Craig and like explain to him my vision for it, and like it was a whole process to get onboarded on Whatnot back then, like 2 years
Hmm.
ago. And I got on board on Whatnot, and I started doing a lot of Whatnot streams with Pokemon, and then eventually into Magic the Gathering, which is kind of interesting because Dick Doc, my partner, we call him Dick Doc. He's like a dick doctor. Dick Doc was actually purchasing MTG packs from me on Whatnot. That's how we met, and now he's my business partner. So it's pretty incredible. But the channel was mostly for fun. Like one time we did a 24-hour stream where I opened a pack a minute for 24 hours straight, just wacky shit like that.
Yeah.
And I made a lot of connections. Like I met people like you and Yizzy and like all of the Whatnot streamers, like all the big time Whatnot streamers, like the Blakes and all those people that bought packs from me. I bought packs from them,
Yeah.
And to this day, we all stay in touch and talk very regularly. So
Hmm.
those partnerships and having that all in place was definitely helpful. And knowing Craig in the beginning before Whatnot had blown up and become what it was, of course, is helpful. So it started to make me think like I have these connections. I know these people. I've got the money. I've got the idea. Let's just go for it. Let's do it. Like, let's launch the game and see what happens. So the YouTube channel, although itself wasn't super profitable because YouTube ad rev is pretty rough for those of you
Yeah.
that know about it, it
Hey,
was,
it's way better than Instagram or
yeah,
TikTok for that matter. Like that, those
yeah,
3 cents for every 1,000 views is brutal on TikTok.
yeah. Ouch.
But yeah.
But yeah, it's what led into me actually like having the confidence and thinking like I can actually do this, you know. And with my other company, we do online sales and work with distributors, and that's all stuff that I'm experienced with. And like sourcing product and manufacturing in general is all stuff that I have experience in. So
Right, and that puts
all
you a
these,
leg up above a lot of these newer TCGs with this understanding of business. I think a lot of people, they want to create a card game and they don't have this level or foresight when it comes to what it's going to take to have a successful TCG. And I think that's super important, right? Like we see all these different TCGs that still have their Kickstarter still going on, that still have or they had just completed their Kickstarter.
mm-hmm,
How much of what they've promised can or will they fulfill? That's something that is something that's always on my mind, right?
sure.
And how even with all the resources that they have, is that even enough for them? And
Well,
so
money
so
can't always doesn't always equate to knowledge and
correct.
experience.
Correct.
So
Just because you
experience
throw money
is
at something
priceless.
doesn't mean it's going to be successful. Correct. Absolutely. I agree with that.
It can
And
actually
and
turn into more of a dumpster fire.
yeah, and so like that's why I asked that question, because you being involved, like that's one thing that most people don't see with a lot of these other TCGs, is the involvement that you kind of have with every, if not all, communities.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to take notes. You have to be a student, and you kind of have to just talk to anyone and everyone, because you never know where it's going to help you out in the long run, right? Like you came into this, you had the Pokemob, you were selling Pokemon cards here and there, but like
Mm-hmm.
you didn't know what having a relationship with content creators was going to lead. You didn't know what it was going to bring as far as Whatnot. Like you didn't know what Whatnot was going to provide for you,
No,
but
and
now
it did a
now
lot.
now it is. Now it's providing in
Mm-hmm.
some way, shape, or form, and I think that's
Yeah.
very fantastic. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I guess my next
Dude,
question, the next topic is going to be the story behind you acquiring an original Christopher Rush artwork, and what
I
is that
got
going to be for Kryptik. So walk us through that. What's the name of the artwork? You shared it on your story. It's for those guys who do not know. I thought the artwork was so sick that I used part of the artwork as part of the thumbnail in the actual
you.
for this particular podcast episode, which I think
Yeah.
is super sick. But yeah, talk us through it. Walk us through that. What is that going to be as far as the game? What is that? Walk us through the story. If you want to tell us how much you spent to, go ahead. But I'm just
I
very
got you.
curious
Yeah.
about that. Yeah, go ahead.
So what's funny is this kind of ties back into something we talked about previously, being that all of these games being developed at the same time is actually a huge advantage to the end consumer.
Right.
Because what inspired me to reach out to Sierra, who's his daughter and heir, the one who got all his art and all of the stuff, she owns everything, is when I saw that the Frank Frazetta deal had gone down with Sorcery and that they had purchased art from his estate. I said, wow, that's pretty interesting. I wonder if I could do something like that. And then I wondered, well, the most iconic trading card game or trading card of all time is the Black Lotus. And it is known by all to be the most iconic card because it was busted and it was special. So I was like, that'd be great. That'd be cool if I get like a Chris Rush piece for my game. And he actually illustrated the original Magic symbols as well. So he's just forever going to be a part of Magic and its history and is the most legendary and iconic artist in Magic's history.
And
So
I think, if I'm not mistaken, someone could correct me after the fact, but Christopher Rush is also, I'm pretty sure, the only American to ever illustrated a Pokemon card for the Pokemon TCG. It's also a promo. The first, the Mewtwo card in Legendary Collection, as well, it's also a promo, was illustrated by Christopher Rush, which I think is super cool. I mean, it could very much be different today because, like, I know a lot of people participate in illustration contests across the board. So I could be very much wrong, but I know at that time he was the only American to have ever illustrated a Pokemon card, which I think is major. For those guys who do not know, Christopher Rush is the illustrator behind the Black Lotus, the most iconic Magic the Gathering card, actually the most iconic trading card in the world. I think today it's one of the probably the most expensive, trading card there is. I mean, I know Pokemon has been kind of trending around Magic the Gathering a little bit, and Pokemon could very much be more expensive, if not, it probably is more expensive now, but who very much, like, I don't know. We don't see Black Lotus as,
the first edition Charizard, because there was only 1,100 of them made.
Do you think it beats any sort of Pokemon trophy card?
The illustrator card that Paul purchased recently, no.
Yeah,
just sheer value. There's just no.
Yeah, it is the most expensive set there is. Like, I know that like, for those guys who were in Orlando for the Collecticon in Orlando that saw the $1 million box break, just the beta Magic the Gathering box, as well as the first edition Shadowless base set box, those were the bulk of the values there. Like, just to give you an idea, I'm pretty sure first edition LOB Yu-Gi-Oh box goes for roughly around $70,000, and that was the third most expensive TCG that was open at that break.
Incredible.
So, like, that being said, it's super stellar to know that you got the artwork. What is the piece called?
It's called Brassman's Will. That's actually the card. So I had been talking with Sierra, and I was like, I want you to be involved in this process. I want you to help me, like, dictate what exactly this card's gonna be like, what its flavor is gonna be like. I want you to be in it, And she'd talk to me, and she's like, well, my dad, and, like, growing up, his gamer tag, like, what he would use on video games was Brassman. He was always the Brassman. I was like, that's sick. Let's use that. So we had done Brassman's Will, and it's him willing energy into the Kryptik space, into Kryptik Island. So it has a very similar functionality to the Lotus, except for it's not as broken. That it can provide 3 soul energy if you're on short time, 1 if you're not, and it's a 0 drop. And you're limited to 1 per deck because the ability is so strong. And then now, with the updated version of it, it abolishes itself or exiles itself after it's played, so that you can't do any, like, disgusting.
Reuse it, yeah.
So the card itself is super flavorful, and it's beautiful. It's an actual heart, and that heart, we've actually fucking made a place for it in the lore. Like, I don't know how much of this I can say, because I don't know how much of it Connor has released yet, but there is a place where citizens are held on Kryptik Island, like a prison type place, and it gets its power from, things related to this card. I don't want to go too far into it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
But it matters in the lore, and it matters a lot in the game, and it's a one of, and a lot of people are going to put it in their decks, and just naturally, based on the origin and history of the art, it's going to be a chase card. I mean, it just is. So,
would you say that that's like the equivalent of the Black Lotus for Kryptik?
Well, it is. I mean, it undeniably is, because of its functionality and just, like, the nature of the card itself. It just is that version of that card for our game. So
yeah, that's pretty sick. Really sought after. Yeah,
and there's going to be versions of it in the actual print run for Kickstarter that only show up 1, maybe 2 times. So if you have a card that's a 1 of 1 or 1 of 2 in, like, the most iconic card that will ultimately be, like, our Black Lotus, it's probably going to be a really sought after card.
Right. When would you say, because you kind of, you yourself, like, the Kickstarter itself has, blown way past what you were currently at, like, what you were asking for. Mm-hmm. When would you say that Kickstarter ends up going out to the overall public? Because, like, you had the 66 Riddle Box. I would assume that because of how fast things are probably moving, when would you say that Kickstarter would go out to the people? Are you still waiting for more funds to come in? Are you still giving people more of a chance to be able to participate within the Kickstarter? Is that what's kind of going on? Like, I know you said, like, a release is coming very, very soon. Mm-hmm. So what's that timeline like, if you can talk about that?
Yeah, of course. It is as fast as humanly possible. The actual overwraps for the packs and the booster boxes themselves are already being manufactured. So the packaging is already being made on our own dime. So that's another advantage that we had.
Yeah.
And the cards themselves will be complete and ordered in the first week of June.
That's crazy. Yeah. That is fast.
Yeah, so the actual physical product should show up to our warehouse in Vegas, I would estimate, by late September. but I had told the backers November so that we have a little bit of a window. And
Hmm.
I really truly do want to beat that by a month or two. So I would
Right.
say more than likely people will start getting their boxes in October, but there are things that I can do to make this happen a little bit faster. And that's another huge advantage of visiting your printer and seeing their process and seeing how everything works
Yeah.
is I can make little
Connections.
suggestions to them like, hey, well, what if we make this right now and that right now? And then the cards will be a little bit easier. And then, like, if we break them up like this, maybe we could get them a little bit faster. And they're like, yeah, that could work. So instead of, 6 to 7 months, which a lot of games wait that long to get their cards made.
Some
And that's,
longer.
yeah, and that's after their print files are done, which could be months after the Kickstarter. We'll have already had products on shelf. And I imagine by Christmas, my goal is to have the Wave 2 boxes of this set Genesis to stores because we
That's
already have established a relationship with the biggest TCG distributor in the U.S. and they're already
right.
working directly with us. And um,
How many cards are within the set?
there's 150. So what's funny is I wanted to do 151 originally, and we were talking to the printer, and he's like, "Check this out. I know you think it's cool to do 151 because it's Pokemon or whatever." He's like, "You got to let that go," because there was already a card we were thinking like was kind of cuttable, and he's like, "The sheets have 100 cards. If you do
Mm.
151 cards,
Oh
the
man.
the nightmare that causes is just so ridiculous. Like, we're not doing that." So we did it based on like commons, noble rares, and rares. We have the three rarities. So one sheet has the 100 commons, and then another sheet would have the 50 rares and noble rares. So there's 13 noble rares, 37 rares, and that would be
Hmm.
printed twice on one sheet. So it just makes for manufacturing. And this is another thing is like my advantage of visiting them and learning all this is that we're going to get our cards so much faster because I know the process and I know ways that we can make it work a little bit faster.
Hmm.
So it's 150 for that reason. And then in future
Yeah.
sets, like the next few sets will likely be 150. And then as we move up and I hire more people, because right now we have two people working as developers, if I hire more people, we can increase that set size to one or to 200.
Yeah.
But we
Now
don't
a
have
lot.
lands in our sets, so the
Right.
sets are actually larger than you would like typically equate a normal set to being because there's no resource cards.
Right.
So just something to
Now
think.
a lot of people, they're gonna be listening to this podcast episode or they're gonna be watching this podcast episode. It's right now our live chat isn't popping off as the most because it's not our typical time where we typically run our podcast. Like Sundays is
Yeah.
a definitely weird time, but there's gonna be a lot of people who are thinking like, Shiv, why do you have Cryptic TCG or why are you talking about new TCGs on your podcast? Well, the thing
Hmm.
is that one thing that I appreciated about what Tanner does is the fact that it's it's not all talk, right? There's a lot of people that are talk and it's just BS, right? Like there's people out there that don't deliver upon the things that they're saying, and at the end of the day, that's super important to me. And then on top of that, I talk to a lot of my close friends in the Pokemon community about the gameplay of certain things. Like, yeah, sure, I'm a collector for the most part, but I do I 100% understand the importance of playability. And I've mentioned that already in this podcast. Like it's beyond
Hmm.
important for a podcast. I mean, not a podcast, for a TCG to be well grounded into their TCG playing community. That is super important because like when MetaZoo first came out, right? Like people were all over the place. People were like, well, how do you even play this game? Like some of the stuff, like
Hmm.
it'd become overwhelming. Like, yes, sure, they have a tournament that's coming up in literally this month, a $250,000 tournament. But the thing is that a lot of people find it overwhelming. A lot of people find it difficult to play with, and there's just a lot of things that come with it. And I mean, at this point, it's part of their brand. So I mean, I can totally see why people are very patient. They love it. But it's definitely different. So like that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast because as this podcast grows, this podcast is going to become something more than Pokemon. It's gonna be more about collectibles and collectability, and I think that's super important for evolving because just like Pokemon have to evolve. But yeah, going back to the whole Christopher Rush art piece, how 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 often or how do you know if there's other pieces of artwork that Christopher Rush has produced that are available in other TCGs?
Not to my knowledge, and especially something that could be done now, because like the few pieces she does have left, like he had some situations where he was like rooming with people and stuff where he wasn't like she wasn't able to get those pieces from those people, or they
Hmm.
were just lost, whatever. And it's very limited, and even for us it's very limited. There are very few pieces that would even make any level of sense to be included into our game. So I imagine we'll have one, maybe two more pieces that get included in cards in the future, and
Hmm.
then we're gonna hopefully have Sierra herself actually illustrating cards for us in the future because she paints.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
she's gonna, yeah, be there to paint cards for us and to just kind of, extend her family's legacy and her dad's legacy and have their name on more cards. And as the game gets more popular and more cards are printed, it just gets cooler and cooler for her. So I'm glad to have like put a spotlight on a piece of art of his that probably no one had ever even really seen, and to give her work in the future and stuff to help her support her current family and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
just like on a real like human level, it's dope all the way around because
Yeah.
she benefits from it financially. Like the people get more Chris Rush pieces on a fresh, brand new game that they can actually play with, which is just so exciting. I mean, for me as a Magic nerd, I'm already incredibly excited about it, and I think that if we can continue that and build on that, of course, the more the merrier. I mean, it's just better
Was
and better.
was the fact that you love Magic the Gathering so much, what like how excited were you when you first bought that piece? Is that piece a one of one?
Yeah, it's a painting, and where is it? I actually don't know where I put it right because I have another painting. I have three total physical paintings for the game. One of them is from Scott Murphy, who is a established Magic artist that
Hmm.
painted the card specifically for us. So like a little bit, we can do a little spoiler. You want to do a spoiler?
Yeah, sure.
This
Let's
is
get the
something
alpha.
this is something I was gonna make a video on, but he did an original painting for the game for a character called Adriel. It is just fucking so far beyond what I was expecting. Like it really blew my mind. So it
Hmm.
got me thinking we have these poker redemption chips in our actual tiers, the higher level tiers. So there's only 11 of them ever made, and they're redeemable for whatever we say they're redeemable for. And the first poker chip redemption is going to be redeemable for them making a custom Kryptik character with me, Connor, and Scott Murphy, and they will receive the original oil painting of the character that they create for the game of Kryptik.
Whoa, that is sick.
Yeah. So just cool shit like that, just taking it to another level, going deep with it. And like a lot of these type of like activations of artists and influencer activations and doing things that are over the top for these games, they have the funds to do it. So, in my opinion, just as like marketing efforts and hype goes, it's worth spending the money on those things. Because like that painting will cost us probably, the games get more popular, probably like $3,000 to $4,000 to have him
Hmm.
do a custom painting and have it given to the poker chip recipient. And to me, that's worth doing. And that makes their pledge and like what they did and like how dedicated they are to our project. Putting up 6 grand or 10 grand to our project is a huge deal. That rewards them for that. So
Yeah, of course. I mean,
cool
like
little.
the way I look at it is like it's not only this whole aspect of influencership or just marketing. What you're doing with buying these pieces, buying these works of artwork, um,
Mm-hmm.
from the once late and great Christopher Rush, like stuff like that. I think a lot of people should 100%. This is not to create hype, but it's something for people to pay attention to. They might not be interested in now, but definitely watch this particular TCG because that being said, we've seen what happened with the Black Lotus, right? We saw it, and this being a one of one where not many people or the vast majority of the public not seeing for the first time, and just the storyline behind this particular painting, it could very much be just that. So like I know that you had if you go on the Kickstarter right now on the website,
Mm-hmm.
you have the actual release of the artwork, and then you have the Kickstarter version of the artwork. Does the Kickstarter version of the artwork is there different variations of the Kickstarter version of that artwork, or is it just one Kickstarter of that particular card, and then you just have the other variation of the card with the different text and the different fonts?
Different text and different fonts. So the regular set will contain Brassman's Will cards,
Yeah.
including the chase cards like the reverse foils and the cryptic text and the green cryptic text cards. So those
Mm-hmm.
will all exist in the sealed product.
Mm-hmm.
The special card, that's the promo that you can only get if you back the Kickstarter,
Mm-hmm.
and that's if you do the 3 tier or 3 box tier or higher, you can get that promo card. That'll
Right.
only be available to them, and it's just like a thanks for backing the game, thanks for being a part of it. And the reason I limited it to the 3 box or higher tier is just I want to have it be special. If I give it to every Kickstarter backer, and like of course we appreciate their support,
Yeah.
I I fear that the print run will be a little bit too high for it to maintain its like special like allure and like make it so where people actually want it.
Absolutely. And it
So
honestly, it doesn't seem too expensive, to be completely honest with you. Like, what is it, like
mhm.
$360 or so dollars?
Yeah, and you get the 3 boxes and a
Yeah.
shitload of stretch goals, all these
Yeah.
promos, a couple starter decks. Yeah, you get a really good value out of that. And I've gotten some shit from like lower tiered backers, like single box backers, and I understand where they're coming from 100% fully because they're like, okay, we built it up, and some of them were confused and had thought it was a stretch goal, but it wasn't. It was just a special bonus that I came up with that I did randomly. So they're like, oh, well, you
Right.
reach the stretch goal on the backs of these start or these backers. I'm like, no, it's not a stretch goal. It was something that was given as a bonus item, and it was something that I chose to make 3 box tier or higher. Like,
Hmm.
appreciate the 1 box tier, of course, those are the vast majority of the people, but I think that keeping it special and giving somebody that pays more makes sense to me. I
But
mean,
it's
they're
also it's
paying.
also one of those things where it's not too far fetched in terms of price point if you honestly think about it. Like
Mm,
if you're spending, like, let's say $100, well, let's say you're buying that three-tiered tier right there. Three
mm,
boxes, you look at Pokemon, for example, right?
mm,
A normal booster box for MSRP is $140, right? It's
mm,
like in the past, it's you could get it for $80, but that's just because it's based on bulk and stuff like that, and how much
yeah.
they're buying in terms of inventory, stuff like that. All that's factored into it. Um, when you look at that and you look at the 3 tier right there, it makes sense. Like, you're getting 3 boxes for $300 or so. Like, that makes sense, right? And then you're
Yeah.
getting all this extra stuff with it. And for me, when guys, I have not bought anything as far as this goes. I'm just simply talking about this in terms of pure numbers and what I personally think. Um, when I look at that and what you're offering, all the stuff that goes with it, it makes sense, right? And knowing the track record that you currently have, where you had a tournament, knowing that you've given out 66 riddle boxes, knowing that you've given out people test decks, 2 test decks.
Mm,
Um, both are very different. They're not the same. I think that being said, it makes sense, right? It 100% in my mind, like, there's no doubt that it makes sense. And having this extra stuff that goes along with what's coming and the expansion of this sort of cryptic universe, it makes sense. So, like, I guess my next question to you, because you and I, we spoke about this through DMs,
mm,
is the importance of lore for me, as a collector, as someone who grew up in the 90s, where you saw the huge revolution behind TCGs as a whole. Lore to me is like the biggest thing. With Pokemon, you had the video games, you had the manga, you had the show, you had the video, like, just there's so many different things that came with it. Um with on the Kickstarter, on the Kickstarter, you have the lore available.
mm.
What else is being done to kind of expand upon the lore in the future, if that's something that you want to talk about? I mean, obviously you don't have to, but, like, what's something that you feel like is going to make people more vested into the lore of Cryptic? Because, like, I think Flesh and Blood, they had a book of their lore, I think, if I'm not
Mm.
mistaken. But what's something that you guys are doing?
Well, we're doing the Cryptic Origins comic series where there's 5
Okay.
chapters, and those are actually going to be given to backers, and that's box or higher tier. So most every backer is actually going to receive physical comics when they get their booster boxes. So that's something that's already in development, already being illustrated and written, and will be based on the Cryptic Origin lore blurbs that we've been posting on the Kickstarter. So we have a writer on staff that we pay as an employee, and Connor, my business partner, Dick Doc, he's the one who actually helps him expand on that lore, and he writes and they go back and forth and kind of dial things in. So we're investing money and time into the actual lore of the game, and it is very important to us. So when we go to develop this game, of course, we have our own like internal processes of how we're going to develop cards in the future. But just as like a quick rundown, when we go to develop Wicked Prophecy, which is our next set, which introduces the Shaman faction, there's going to be a common spreadsheet used by both teams. So there's a lore team, there's a game development team, and then the cell in the center of this spreadsheet is common ground, and it's what we're calling the flavor reference. So there will be things placed there by both sides that tell you what's the general vibe of the card, what's the story of the card, what kind of ability we're working with, so that we can always make sure we're on the same page. So that each card has flavor and the ability makes sense. And every time somebody plays it, they go, "Oh, I see what they did there. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Oh, this character relates to that character, and then that's why they're fighting in this scene." Things of that nature. So we're paying super close attention to it. And I think the IP for this game is very, very strong. And the overall story for it has just hooked people. And
Hmm.
I think it's extremely realistic that the IP of Kryptik could be used for anything else. It could be a live action series, it could be a movie. I mean, this could be an extremely dope video game. Like
It gives
this
me
IP.
Witcher vibes. It gives me
Yeah.
Witcher vibes, 100%. It gives me that
Yeah.
kind of vibe. Like when I think of like live action, something similar or kind of similar to what this is, it gives me the Witcher vibes. Like it's very, like I just thought of that now, which is super sick. Um, this is a question just from me though.
Hmm.
For people who buy into the tier 3 or higher for that particular that card right there, the
Hmm.
brass man's will,
Yes.
I think people want to know how many of those are going to be in production, how many of those are going to be made, and what is that going to be like in comparison to like what's the difference between that versus the normal release of the card?
So that'll be based on backer numbers, but this is all going to be
Makes
public
sense.
knowledge. Like when
Yeah,
we do print runs of anything, there's a spreadsheet that's linked on our website
that's
where I
cool.
detail, yeah, I detail every single print run we've done, exactly how many cards are made, and photos showing you what the actual cards look like, including test decks, test cards, all that stuff. So all this
That's
stuff's
cool.
always public knowledge, and it will be always moving forward. So that right now is sitting around 550 copies, and then will, hopefully in the next couple days and like the last couple days of the Kickstarter campaign will increase. So I would imagine it would definitely not go over 1,000. Probably gonna land somewhere in like the 700 to 800 range, I would assume. The normal card itself is a noble rare in the set, so it would show up probably every other box in its normal form. So if you could just do the quick math, 7,500 boxes, we're talking 3,700 copies. And then the rare versions of that card will be broken down in like one out of 200 packs, one out of 1,000 packs. So we're talking maybe one or two of the highest rarity version, and then maybe like 10 to 12 of the second. So
Mm-hmm.
the quantities will be very limited, and the special versions I imagine will be considered to be chase cards. So
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, like I that's another thing that I appreciate about what you do. It's the fact that you're very transparent across the board with everything that's going on, with everything that you're allowed to say. You're very very
mhm.
transparent about. Whereas like other TCGs that are relatively new, they keep everything kind of hidden around this shroud of mist, and it keeps people wondering. And sure, that's fine, but I think a
It's
lot
not.
of people a lot of people get too vested and they have high expectations for things, and I think the fact that you're keeping things very very transparent, and
Mhm.
you're again very happy to answer certain questions about certain things, I think that's the biggest thing that I think is very very underrated, which shouldn't be underrated. It should be very properly noticed when it comes to TCGs as a whole, because you know um when people are backing something, they're putting their money towards something. It means that they're invested. They believe in something, and often at times, people don't kind of live up to that. People don't really um, give that kind of knowledge out to people. Um,
I'll tell you why they withhold the knowledge is that they don't want to put out a number that would cause a secondary market to lose confidence and box prices to go down. So if they
mm,
accidentally overprinted their cards, they don't want you to know that. And there's no other reason. There's really no other reason. So if you're transparent about it and you print to a level that makes sense for the current market, and it gets tricky, it really does, because what percentage of these Kickstarter backers are going to put their boxes on eBay the day they get it?
A
I don't
lot.
know, 30%,
A
40%,
lot.
maybe
A
70,
good
you know what I
number.
mean? It's just you don't know. So I got to pay attention to what the market's doing with the boxes, if they're being moved, if they're being opened and played with, and that's all stuff I have to take note of and come up with some averages and try to determine how many boxes of the next sets we require. Like how many of these people actually want the game, how many of these people play the game,
Hmm.
and I need to be very careful not to print too many boxes. So people would assume that say there's 6,000 Kickstarter boxes that there would be 10,000 or 12,000 of the Wave 2 boxes. Not necessarily, because that might be an overprint. You just never know.
Right.
So that's also that is on us as a company to keep track of and take care of. And why not tell the people how many boxes exist? Like literally, what are you hiding? I mean, it's
Yeah.
just a matter of you're hiding something, and that feels gross to me already. So
Yeah. Because, I mean, like, you have people who are, they believe in you, they believe in the brand. So, like, why not, like, why not just be transparent, right? It costs 0 cents of $0 just to be transparent. And just because they believe that it might devalue their brand, I still think it's super important to to be transparent when it comes to numbers. I think it's important for people who are also looking at it in terms of a collectability standpoint. Like, hey, how many of these boxes exist, right? How many of these cards exist? How many of this particular tier rarity of cards exist? Like, these are all things that are super important to collectors for the most part, right? Like, I think one thing is super is always in the conversation when it comes to Pokemon, and that is how much of what actually exists. How many of these vintage boxes are out there now? How many of these
way
first
more than
edition
we
boxes?
thought.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you look at what's happening on Whatnot, Unlimited is truly, truly unlimited. We see it happen.
Yep.
We see it open up almost every single day, if not multiple times throughout the day on Whatnot. We see it happen so frequently that it just makes you wonder. So, like, down the road, let's say 20, 30 years down the road with Kryptik, it's like, oh, this was the release of XYZ
Mhm.
of the fifth set of this particular box. Like, people are gonna want to know that.
Yeah.
Um,
And
because
in my opinion, it's a right to know it. They're
yeah,
spending the money. That'd be
yeah,
like a company, a publicly traded company withholding their earnings. Like that's just ridiculous to
yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah. That's a really Kang, when you see this, definitely click that up. I think that's super important because if you're backing the company from the jump, I think that's something that you kind of have to know. Um, I wouldn't say it should be something that you should know even way after the fact, but yeah, 100%. I think it should be there. Like, if you're a company that's public, then that should be information that's known to everyone.
Yeah,
Um,
it's dude. It's like I'm an EMT obviously, so every once in a while we have to get like pulled into court and deal with all that bullshit.
yeah.
But it's like testifying in court. The truth will set you free if you're always telling the truth and being open and honest and transparent. Conversations are easy because you don't have to be a scumbag or a liar. So
Mm-hmm.
when I'm talking to a fan of Cryptic or an influencer like yourself, or no offense if that term is not your
It doesn't
preferred
bother.
term, but like a
It doesn't
content
bother
creator
me.
myself,
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
yeah,
I'd
I
say
can
I'm
be
like
open.
both, but who knows?
Yeah, and I can tell you anything I want, and I can just tell you the truth about everything, and it makes everything so much easier. Besides trying to be shady or trying to hide shit, and
Right.
the only thing I would ever withhold from anybody is ideas I have to
Mm-hmm.
enhance the product in the future that I think my competitors would use to cut me in line. I'd much rather have them copy me after the fact
Mm-hmm.
than copy me before I'm able to do something and giving the appearance that I copied them.
Of course.
That's the only
Yeah, of
thing.
course. 100%. I fully agree with that. We're headed towards our hour mark. Is
Hmm.
there anything that you would like to say about the Cryptic TCG and about the brand itself that we probably haven't quite touched on?
Yeah, I would like to talk a little bit about the digital platform game.
Oh,
So
I also want to talk about Collecticon because you did mention that, and we'll talk about that as soon as you're done talking about the digital aspect.
this will
Yeah,
just be real quick. I'm
yeah, go
already
ahead.
paying developers to do it. The functionality of the zones of all of the like menu trading system, trading, that's right. You can trade your digital cards. That's already all built out. Now we're in the process of actually programming the cards themselves. So you guys will see a video preview of that this week of the game actually functioning, not a digital render, not something that we're making in editing software, but an actual screen capture of a functional game you will see this week.
Wow.
And trading is the key. So trade, build, collect. That's what we're going off of, or trade, build, play. So people can actually trade their cards. So your homie could log on to Cryptic Online. You could trade an entire deck with one click, and they can start playing the game. And
Hmm.
that's the key. So that's all I got to say about that. But yes, Collecticon.
Yeah, let's talk about that being said about the whole digital aspect. There's a lot of upswing with that now that we're getting bigger and bigger into the digital space, and oftentimes there's a lot of negativity when it comes to certain things, certain projects these days. But it again, with you being transparent, I think a lot of people will definitely see that, and they'll definitely appreciate that. Um,
Well, and how about as an incentive to buy a box at a physical store, you also get a digital box when you buy the physical box. Things like that I can do to push people to physical stores, that's going to benefit me in the long run and the
are,
player.
are people going to be able to get like online cards within the packs themselves, or how is that
That
done?
we have that we've not started developing.
Uh huh.
That is something that I'm going to have to talk to all parties involved to dial
Hmm.
in and make sure it's solid. But it is easy for me to include, like, say a store buys a case, they get like 6 code cards redeemable for 6 digital booster boxes.
Hmm.
That's something that I can do in the near term, like something
That
that
makes
I can do
sense,
by the end of the year probably.
right? But yeah, let's go ahead and talk more about Collecticon. So
Hmm.
you briefly mentioned that you have a booth. I'm assuming the Cryptic TCG booth.
Yep.
What are people expected to see when they come across your booth in Collecticon in Dallas? And are you going to be at every Collecticon here on out? Are you going to be in Charlotte? Are you going to be in LA? Are you going to be in Kansas City and Denver?
Yes. We're going to be at every CollectCon for the rest of the year. We already have our booths in Charlotte and Dallas because they're the only ones available to purchase currently.
Correct.
So as soon as those start to come up as available, we'll buy them the day of. Dallas, what you can expect is you ever been to Legoland?
No, I
You
have
know what I'm
not.
saying? So Legoland has this area where you can build these little cars and race each other on this little drag strip. That's how our booth is going to be set up, where there's tons of cards, physical cards. You can build decks, play with each other, learn about the game. We're going to be talking to people about lore. And if you're willing to sit down and play a game, you can walk away with a Charlie promo card at the Dallas Con because that's my birthday weekend. Charlie's my favorite character. So, of course, we had to do it up. And I actually already have the cards. So, I'll be giving
That's
away
cool.
cards to people that are willing to sit down and learn and play. I'm not going to be giving cards to people that have 80 other cards in their bag that are clearly just going to be putting them on eBay in the next 45 seconds. So if you come up
Yeah.
to me and go, where the promos, where the promos, you're going to get the same disrespect back, and I'm going to point the other direction. So,
Yeah. You're
uh,
gonna be like, hey, go to that booth instead.
yeah, I'll just give you a fair warning. Anyone watching that comes to my booth, if you come at me with like a scalper attitude or you try to like take advantage or pull anything from me, um, you're not going to get a positive response. But
Yeah.
the actual fair, right? But the actual like focus of the booth is going to be to get people playing and learning about the game. So
Yeah, that's
very
that
interactive, a lot of
that's
fun.
better to put it. I mean, I think, I would like to be at your booth. I would like to be at
Mm,
every booth, but
mm,
with Collecticon having me run panels, it's kind of hard for me to be involved in any sort of capacity. But
yeah,
I'll definitely stop by and see set up on Friday and just talk and hang out after the fact. I think that's what I appreciate the most about these events, just being able to hang out with people, do what I can. I can't be everywhere at once, so it's kind of hard to hang out with just everyone all the time. But
yeah,
that being said, I'm sure we get to hang out. It's like you and I got to
yeah.
hang out at the Rocks in Orlando. So that's something that I definitely
Um,
appreciated a
yeah.
lot.
That's how I met a lot of people, and
Yeah.
it was funny when me and Swole actually met initially. He's become like this huge fan of Cryptic,
Oh,
which I
he's a
love.
super fan.
Yeah, he loves Cryptic, which is sick because his mind's in the right place. He's very smart and loving Cryptic. But I'll say when we first met, it was kind of funny because our introduction was like talking about all these random new games, and he was kind of like, there's all these games, they're doing this, they're doing that, and I just let him. I was like, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, totally. So then
Yeah.
I busted out my backpack and I say, hey, you want a promo pack from the game I'm developing? And he's
Yeah.
like, oh, it was just a really funny interaction and a way to meet. But we talked for a little bit, and since then he's just loved it. But I met Forever there, and he pulled me some fucking insane cards. I don't know if you saw the cards I actually pulled that day, but the what was the set where they would have half of the legendary bird, like the Ho and the Lugia, that were
Oh, oh,
halves?
oh, oh, it's not Call of Legends. I think it's somewhere in the Heart Gold Soul Silver era.
It
Um,
was Heart Gold Soul Silver. So I got the Ho. I bought 2 packs, and I got the halves. I got one of each half.
that's wild.
It
That
was
is sick.
insane,
You
dude.
only got 2 packs and you pulled both of the halves consecutively.
Bro, I
That
literally
is
just got
nuts.
chills thinking about it. It
Dude,
was
that
the most
is that is sick. I wish I would
crazy.
that video that right there, that would have been
Yeah.
sick. If
I
there's a
got
video of
clips
that,
for me and forever because I'm like on his shoulder and I'm like, let's go, let's go. And he's like, oh, you got something. And he pulls it and I'd already pulled the top half and it was the bottom half out of one box. I was
that's
like,
crazy.
dude, we lost our minds. We were going crazy. I got
Dude,
them graded
that's
on the spot and they have the Collecticon pedigree on them and shit. It's sick.
that's sick. Um,
But that's
oh,
where I met
Tab
everybody.
Lab.
Orlando, it
And,
really changed my perspective on everything, dude. It
yeah,
really did. Just meet everybody.
like I said, like I tell everyone here, like people don't really understand how great these events are. Like
Oh,
like
you
people
must
people get so
go.
caught up in negativity when it comes to social media, but like when you come out to these events, I think that is like the heart and the soul of like what the hobby is supposed to be. Like it legitimately is about collecting. There are people there who play. There are people there who just enjoy the companies of each other's and just rip packs. Like
Dude, it's
I
awesome.
could tell you right now, like even like the dinner, no, not dinner. I think it's the last night before I flew back home, and all of us are in that little tiny little kitchen slash lobby area.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Everyone was
like
just
people were
chilling,
just
opening packs.
chilling, opening stuff. Like some people were
Mhm.
opening up Squishmallow cards. Like there were people opening up just different stuff across the
Yeah, all the
board, and
random shit we got all weekend.
yeah, like it's people it's kind of like the after party, and I tell people this, and I tell people like Matthew from Collecticon, like, hey, the convention does not end when people leave that venue. The convention is still happening after the fact, and I think
Yep.
people who are vested into these shows who come in, I think that's the biggest thing about it. Um, quickly,
Collecticon's awesome, man. It's like a
Andy over
tour
here,
too, bro.
Tap Lab is saying, is there a special promo for the Poke Tea Time viewers right now? Give us a secret code word to tell you at Collecticon. Nah, we're not gonna do that. Maybe in the
If
future.
we
Maybe
would
in the
have
future.
prepared for that, maybe.
Yeah, if we were prepared for that, maybe. But in the future, I mean, like just like I said before, just say like, just go up to him, talk to him. I think that's the biggest thing. People are always having expectations when it comes to certain things. I think it's important to just talk to people, um,
Yes.
and just get to know them. Just talk to them, but just say
Oh,
like,
I love Collecticon,
just
man.
just tell Tanner here that you saw him on the Poke Time podcast episode, and just kind of say tell him the things that you do like, or tell him criticisms that you might have. I think there's so much to be learned, and
Dude, I get a lot
so
of criticisms and I love it. Like, I
yeah,
watched a random YouTube video by this guy that gets like maybe 50 to 100 views, but he does Kickstarter critiques and he's like an
ooh,
expert. He's a super backer on Kickstarter.
that's
And I
cool.
was looking at it and I was like, shit, he's right about a lot of this. I wrote it all down and implemented it the next day. And I commented, hey, you're right. I did all these changes. Thank you for the critique. We're not above or too proud to take critiques. We're community driven for real. So
Mm-hmm.
we were actually doing like Google Sheets where people would submit critiques of the cards to
Wow.
us through the community. So we are definitely community driven for real. And it's kind of cool because it gives me a hiring pool. So when I hire these developers, Q being the first one, he was in the Discord when we had 20 people in the Discord.
Mm-hmm.
Bells, that just won my most recent tournament, I hired him on the spot to be a part-time developer for Kryptik. So these are things that we're doing. So like anything you guys have to say about it, I will read it. I will take it in consideration. If I think it's legit, I'll take it to my partners, and ultimately, it really could be implemented in the game. So
Right.
don't be shy.
But yeah, definitely go up, pop up to the Cryptic TCG booth, say hi, hello. Definitely talk to him. I think that'd be pretty cool. I think soon after you're gonna see a lot of big things, a lot of things moving very very fast. And again, with
Right.
someone who is transparent as Tanner,
Mhm.
you're definitely gonna see everything in that process within the next few months. And I mean, it being May right now, it's not that we're not too far away from September,
Mhm.
from the fall. Like we're in the midst. We're pretty much at the door. Where I think we're at summer now at this point. Um,
Yeah.
I there's not much time, so definitely make it a point to talk to him, get to know him, and that's really much all I have to say. Tanner, kind of tell us, plug yourself in, tell people where they can find you, what discords, to find you. I think
Yeah.
I'll have my editor, or I'll put it there myself. I'll put down your Cryptic TCG Discord down in the links below, in the
Yeah.
description. So, as well as your other stuff. But go ahead and tell people where they can find you for our listeners on Spotify and Apple Music. I mean Apple Podcasts.
Everything, yeah, yeah. Everything is Cryptic TCG. So the Instagram's at Cryptic TCG and discord.gg/Cryptic TCG, just to make it easy. If you search Cryptic TCG on Kickstarter, it'll take you straight to our campaign, which is live till the 15th. So definitely get in on that because we're not doing backer kit or any orders after the fact. So all the boxes and product that are ordered at the closing time on May 15th will be all that will be able to be purchased. So set a reminder in your phone. Yeah, make sure that you have a reminder set up in your phone for Saturday to make sure to put whatever you want on your pledge, because beyond that, I will not be able to help you. So everything's at Cryptic TCG. Best place to follow us is on Instagram. Best place to learn more about the game is Discord. So
yeah, I mean, that pretty much covers it all. It's really cool. It's really refreshing to talk about something outside of Pokemon. I love Pokemon, but it's always cool to talk about other TCGs because there's more out there. And as a collector like myself, I learn a lot by watching what happens outside of Pokemon. That's how I make a lot of my I wouldn't say investments, but that's how I make a lot of my decisions. Yeah, decisions is the best word. That's how I make a lot of my decisions. Like when it comes to sports cards, I watch what they're doing. I watch what's happening in the sneaker game. There's so much to learn and take from different things in the collectible space, and I think that's really it.
Awesome, my friend.
Yeah,
appreciate you having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. I'm glad we had you on the podcast for once, and we'll definitely have to have a follow up very, very soon. It'd be really interesting to see what happens in the next year after this, like within a year or so. It's because I like to have my guests on here at least more than once.
For sure.
But besides that, I don't know if you know how we sign off on the podcast, but I do this thing with every single one of my guests, and well, even if it's just by myself, but I do it with every single one of my guests. It's you get the imaginary teacup, you have your pinkies out, you sip up, you say the. Yeah, you can do that. You get
it's Mother's Day. That's why I'm sipping on Coors early, because we're gonna be chilling by the pool with Ma. So
there you go. Then you got your sip up, you say pieces, and then you salute out.
So do I.
Yeah, that's good enough. Solid? Yeah. It's we do it like this: sips up, pieces, and we're out.
I got it. Okay.
All right. So on 3,
yeah.
Sips up, deuces, and we're out. See you guys on the next one. We have our next podcast episode on Tuesday where we will have Dan, aka Catch 'em All Collectibles. Make sure you watch it. We're gonna be talking about some interesting stuff because that dude is a genius. That dude breaks everything down when it comes to PSA, BGS, CGC, you name it. It is super cool to talk to Dan, and just stay tuned. We have a lot of interesting stuff coming on the podcast. Make sure you give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And if you enjoy this podcast, make sure you share it. Make sure you blast it on your social medias because it helps us. We're getting super, super close to getting monetized on this channel, even though we have sponsors. But let me go ahead and quickly talk about our sponsors. Tanner, you're going to have to strap in on this one because it takes a little bit. We had TCG Stadium. They're an online card shop based in Nashville. They house Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Products. So make sure you visit tcgstadium.com right now and buy what you need to. I know the Pokemon Go set is about to come out, so make sure you tune in. That could be a resource. That could be a place where you buy your Pokemon Go TCG cards. Next up, we have the Pokemon Network, Ken Lee. Ken Lee is your one-stop shop to go to when it comes to buying the most affordable product, cards, slabs, down to the most expensive Pokemon, or maybe even Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards there is. So make sure you see him. He's gonna be at almost all, if not all, Collecticons. I don't think he's gonna be in Charlotte, but he's definitely gonna be in Dallas because that's his home turf. Make sure you stop by, say hello to him. Then finally, we have Double Infinity Gaming. Double Infinity Gaming is an online card shop based in Florida. Julie and Will, they're happy to help you. They house many different TCGs. They played many different TCGs. And they're just overall great members of the community. Next up, we have the Collector app. The Collector app is the world's most futuristic portfolio tracking app there is. It tracks 8 different TCGs currently, Funkos, as well as basketball cards currently. Just download the app. It's free, and it's super cool. It tracks trends. It does it all. Make sure you download it today. And, let me know what you think of the app. And that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you guys for joining the Poke Tea Time podcast. And we have more reaction videos coming up, so make sure you join the Discord. So we'll see you guys on the next one. Make sure you join the Discord. Make sure you join the Cryptic TCG Discord. And make sure you add Cryptic TCG on Instagram as well. And we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace!